Organizational hormonal effects vs activational. Organizational. Early in life, setting up the nervous system. To realize later on an activational effect. Females, prenatally or perinatally androgenized, because of high testosterone levels equals organizational masculinization effect. Even with low testosterone levels equals high levels of aggression, and, less maternal behavior. In humans. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia. A tumor on the mother that produces high androgen, a testosterone derivate, which androgenizes the fetus. The drug, women in the 50s took it because it prevents miscarriage, but in some cases had androgenic effect. What about his behavior? Are they going to be more aggressive? When you androgenize a female fetus. Higher than average IQ. Tendency to be left-handed, better spatial skills. And they were more aggressive than normal. Because they were not interested in dolls, marriage, and were interested in a career. But actually, they had left-handed, yes. Spatial skills, yes. Higher IQ, yes. But because their parents had a higher IQ. And there's no significant evidence for change in aggression/behaviors. Also, they were born with a hermaphroditic profile, or genitals that looked like males, or intersex. So, they had reconstructive surgeries in their first years of life. Non-identical twins. You're a female. And you spent your uterus life with a brother. Did being exposed to testosterone makes you more aggressive? Yes. More aggressive play in childhood. More interested in mechanical things. Less in dolls, animals. But only little effects. Also, not only she spends their prenatal environment with his brother, but she grows up with him. Simon Baron-Cohen. Hypermale hypothesis of autism. More boys have autism than girls. Men take more analytical approaches to social problem solving. Functional spatial skills. Girls take more empathic solving problem. Language skills. Individuals with autism, independent of their sex. Both have more exaggerated versions of male typical profiles. Finger length. Analytical focus. Strong spatial skills. So, Simon said perhaps something going on in terms of prenatal androgenization, which produces more masculinized profiles. Genes and aggression. Genes, hormones, receptors, enzymes, have something to do with it. Some people claim that they have removed a gene from a rat, then, they become more aggressive. But what about if that gene is relevant to impulsivity? So they can't control their behavior. Or pain. They're more sensitive to pain, so they display aggressive behavior. Or, they become more aggressive, and more affiliative, etc. etc. Actual genes. Serotonin synthesis genes. Serotonin receptor genes. Dopamine receptor genes. But again, genes don't cause aggression. Genes modulate, depending on the environment, like abuse and stress early in life. This is how all genes are relevant to behavior. Even if the person had frontal damage. The previous environment is what mostly determines what the outcome will be. And we don't know enough. Richard Speck. Sociopath, 1968, Chicago. He broke into the apartment of 8 nurses, and slaughtered them all. Then, doing a blood test. Somebody saw that their karyotypes, structures of his chromosomes. He had a chromosomal abnormality. Females XX. Males XY. And he had XYY. People started panicking, doing all sort of things. But in 1970s, they realized there was no relationship whatsoever. He actually was XY, but the guy who did the test screwed it up. Ecology/culture and aggression. How people make their living. Nomadic pastoralists people vs everybody else. Pastoralists have higher violence. Standing armies, warrior classes. Leadership. Myths around religion, that success in war. USA, original 13 colonies. American South was settled by nomadic pastoralists. Also, their cultures of honor. They have rules about enforced hospitality for guests. And aggression retributive over symbolic affronts. Richard Nisbett. Most crimes in the American South are murders of honor. In his experiment, he had some volunteers. At some point they needed to move to another place. And suddenly, some big guy comes at one volunteer, bumps into him with his shoulder, and says, "Watch it, asshole." Then, they look at blood pressure, heart rate, etc. People from the north are kinda irritated, and 2 minutes later they're okay. People from the south have massive stress response, hypertension, high testosterone levels, big regional differences. Deserts vs rainforests. Deserts equals pastoralists. Rainforest equals hunter-gatherers. Higher violence in deserts. Desert nomadic pastoralists invented monotheism. They invented warfare, warrior classes, raiding, etc. Rainforests are polytheistic. Cultural myths of victimization. Cultures with histories/myths of victimization, and strong values of retribution, are extremely violent societies. Altruistic punishment. You can spend your resources to punish the other individual for cheating. How much are you willing to spend to punish somebody? Across countries, on average they had the same percentage. Antisocial punishment. You spend your resources to punish someone for being overly generous. Scandinavia, USA, UK, has the lowest percentage. Middle Eastern countries, Eastern Bloc, Korea, Turkey, middle percentage. Greece, Arabian Peninsula, at top. They're even willing to spend more percentage to do antisocial punishing, than to punish cheaters. But the rate of antisocial punishment was related to the levels of trust in the society, not with aggression. Lower levels of social capital equals more antisocial punishment. Terrorism. Abnormal sociopathic behavior. Or is an extreme ideology. Demographic and psychological profile of terrorists. Young. Male. Socially isolated. Socially unaffiliated of relationships. Uneducated background. Childhood abuse. Terrorists in the Middle Eastern are 30 to 40s. Well-educated. Middle, or upper-class backgrounds. Males and females. They don't have had any direct exposure to the suppression that they're fighting against. No high levels of religiosity. Interpretations. 1. Under the right circumstances anybody could do anything that's appalling. 2. Terrorism is selecting for more sophisticated population. That are able to travel, navigate customs, etc. But we don't know yet. Evolution and aggression. What increases rates of aggression? Individual selection. The major cause of aggression is male-male violence over reproductive access to females. E.g. 1. Napoleon Chagnon. Yanomami tribe. High testosterone in males. They're insanely aggressive, high violence between and within groups. Because the more people you killed equals higher reproductive success. E.g. 2. Orangutans. Raping each other. Rape in other species. In humans. It's not about passing on copies of your genes. It's about power and subjugation. The second leading cause of violence is males attacking females over denial of sexual access. Female-female competition. Infanticide. Competitive infanticide. Kin selection. 2 brother or 8 cousins. Related individuals cooperate to be aggressive. E.g. 1. Chimps. Females pick up at puberty, because all the males are relatives. As a result, high levels of male-male cooperation. Like patrols, warfare, genocide. E.g. 2. Baboons. Aggression is between lineages. E.g. 3. Humans. Relatives, is a relative term. It's my brother, my cousins, and I, against the world. And, it's my brothers and I, against my cousins. What about child abuse? Are you out of your mind? This is copies of your genes there. Daly and Wilson. A child is more likely to be abused by a stepfather, than a biological father. Because kin selection. And a child is more likely to be abused by a paternal grandparent, than a maternal one. Because more certainty of paternity. But problems. Failure of replications on other societies, Scandinavians. When times get tough, families with stepfathers are under more economic duress than families with biological father, more violence. How we interact with people who we feel so close, non-relatives. Pseudo-kinship. Because of manipulative skills. Like military indoctrination. People becoming a band of brothers. E.g. 1. Warrior cultures. Maasai. You become a warrior around 15, you protect the cows. At 25, you get married to a 13-year-old girl. And they live separately from everybody else. They use kinship terms for each other. Their wife will call the other warriors father-in-law. And they can only share food with another warrior. E.g. 2. Israeli military. After high school, they join units as a group of friends from their high school. E.g. 3. WW2. USA. Highly heterogeneous country. And if you were of German ancestry, you would share more genes in common with people you were trying to kill, than your American partners. Where this failed. Vietnam. People were not kept in stable fighting units. They were constantly shuttling in and out. So, the pseudo-kindship didn't occur. Because, if they allowed units to remain more stable, soldiers were more likely to shoot to their officers. Pseudo-speciation. The psychological and propagandist mechanism, to make them seem as different from you as possible. They're so different, they hardly even count as humans, it doesn't count as much when you kill them. E.g. 1. Rwandan. Hutu tribes killing the Tutsi. Kill the cockroaches. E.g. 2. 1990s. Gulf War. Kuwait drilled oil from the Iraq's land. Iraq invaded Kuwait. USA, drive the Iraqis out of Kuwait. Ultimately, to follow them into Iraq and overthrow Saddam Hussein. Diplomacy was failing. USA make a coalition with other countries to fight Iraq. But US Congress didn't authorize it as an act of war. Then, a woman nurse, refuge from Kuwait, went to the Congress to testify. She said, Iraqis steal the supplies of the hospital, and took the newborns out of the incubators and let them out to die, and shipped the incubators back to Iraq. That argument helped the Congress to go to war against Iraq. But this never happened. The nurse was the niece of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the US. The US make up this story, she said that in the Congress. And US went into war with 92% approval rate. And when people knew about this, they just buried all the information, and nobody pay attention. In short, individual selection. Alternative male strategies. Baboons. Just be a nice guy, and females will choose you. Parental behavior. South American pair bonding monkeys. They're barely aggressive. Kin selection. Pseudo-kinship, band of brothers. Pseudo-speciation, they hardly even count as humans. But also, pseudo-kinship can be used to decrease violence. E.g. 1. Bedouins. They were in war. Then, they did a ritual. Old guys from each group come together, they start exploring their genealogies. And they make an imaginary relationship between the two groups. Imaginary relatedness. E.g. 2. Aboriginal groups in Australia. When both groups find water in the same spot, they supposedly attack for the water. But now, both sit down around the waterhole. Give their genealogy. They create imaginary relatedness. And they share the water. E.g. 3. After revolutions. They call each other's sisters, brothers, unite, etc. Elizabeth Phelps. With a brain scanner. You flash up pictures of people, faces, so fast, tapping into subliminal stuff. And you get activation of the amygdala, when you show them pictures of somebody of another race. But Susan Fiske. If the person of another race has a red dot in their face, and you ask them to look at it, the amygdala doesn't activate. If the person of another race looks older or younger than age 30, the amygdala gets even more activated. If the person of another race, you think he likes Coke or Pepsi, the amygdala doesn't activate. So, if you subliminally prime someone to think about somebody as an individual, rather than as part of a category/group, the amygdala doesn't activate. Also, people who grew up in racially and ethnically diverse neighborhood, the amygdala didn't activate. People who had a close relationship with someone of another race, the amygdala didn't activate. So, early childhood exposure, and think of people as individuals, and the amygdala doesn't activate. Contact theory. Aggression goes down. Affiliation goes up. If people grow up in contact with people from other cultures, they have less bias against the diversity of people. But it takes a lot of sustained exposure. And also, more contact can be more irritation if they're not so close. E.g. 4. Neurobiology of symbols. Metaphors. Robert Axelrod. Symbols in peacemaking. Respect the symbols of somebody else, over resources. Reciprocal altruism. Garrett Hardin. The tragedy of the commons. If you are going to see somebody just once, you don't need to cooperate. But Axelrod. How you start cooperation. 1. Founder populations. Where some individuals leave, they cooperate, then they come back, and make everyone cooperate, or they're out of the game. 2. Cooperate even when not a lot of people cooperate. New York, 1980s. 2. Ethnic groups. Korean and Lebanese immigrants. Koreans sell fruit, vegetable. Lebanese sell groceries. Both have a lot of success. All because they cooperate with each other. They give interest-free loans, etc. And the rest of the population complain because they were cooperating. So, either you join in, or you extinguish. 3. Repetition. Where you play with an individual more than once, but you can't know the number of rounds. Because they'll cheat the last round. Shadow of future retribution. 4. Open book play. You will play with different individuals. And when you play with a new individual, they can know your record, as how you played in previous games. Good reputation equals cooperation. 5. If the individual start cooperating in different games, it's more likely to start cooperating in all of his games. 6. You can punish the cheaters. Altruistic punishment. If somebody cheats you, you can expend your resources, to take more resources of them. Or, second-party altruistic punishing. One individual, who is not participating in the trade, can spend his resources to punish the cheater. Or, secondary altruistic punishing. If the guy of the second party don't punish the cheater, the secondary altruistic will punish him. 7. The opportunity to drop out of the game. To play with the rest of the individuals, but not with the cheater. Group selection. Traits manifested in the group. Small groups cooperating, and kick out the non-cooperators. Downsides. 1. Chimpanzees. Males cooperating. Patrols. Less homicide within the group equals genocide between groups. WW1, 1914. They decided a truce on Christmas Day. They played soccer, exchanged gifts, sang, got drunk. After the truce, they returned to trying to kill each other. But also, the truce extended 2 or 3 days, because the officers couldn't stop the soldiers for doing this. How do you create these truces? Take your best gunner and lob a shell 20 yards behind the enemy trench. Then, do it again and again, hitting the exact same spot. Is like saying, this guy is so good, and I don't want to send the missiles in your trench, what you gonna do? Then, the other side will do the same. As a result, you get a non-aggression pact. This is well documented in letters. But what happen if the guy misses and hit their trench? They got one shot back. Tit for tat, with a forgiving element. And the only thing that stopped them, were the officers that don't allow them to do it. And they could perfectly stop the war if they had done this, if they only had a way to communicate. Another history of aggression, which I recommend to see, 1 hour 36 minutes and 30 seconds.